The general public doesn't know their names. However, their contribution to Ukraine's fight is huge. Their support is appreciated both in the rear and on the front line. They are the ones who bring our victory over the enemy closer. They are the fellows of Ukraine. Hi, this is the Fellows of Ukraine project from You Donation. We want to tell about the people who have been helping Ukraine since the Russian invasion, despite being hundreds and thousands of kilometers away. We will tell their stories through the prism of Ukrainian realities. Our guest today is Oleksandr Pankieiev, ethnographer and historian, research coordinator at the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, and editor-in-chief of the Forum for Ukraine Studies. Hello, my name is Lisa. The first question will be about your childhood. As far as we know, you have Ukrainian roots. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, I grew up in Ukraine and I spent my childhood between Kharkiv region and Zaporizhia. But I was born particularly in Zaporizhia, and then I grew up in a small village in Kharkiv region. It is Sakhnovshinsky district at this moment. And it was a really interesting period because when I actually started my first grade, it was 1991 when Ukraine regained its independence. So I think that I was growing together with Ukraine. So my identity experienced all the pluses and minuses of that period. But I'm really grateful because I had a chance to spend my childhood, particularly in those formative years, because I understood different generations of Ukrainians who lived in Ukraine, but also I am probably the representative of a new generation that right now is probably dominating in Ukraine at this moment.
How did you form your identity, and what influenced your interest to Ukraine history, to Ukraine culture?
I need to admit that I'm a professional historian and also professional ethnographer, but it didn't come to me immediately. When I was growing up in the small village in Kharkiv region, I had a problem that I didn't have access to literature, and everything that we had in our library, it was published during the Soviet Union period. And I had the feeling that something is actually beyond of that small library that we had at school. And I was really interested in history, thanks to my teacher of history. He actually made me be a historian at first place. But the formation of myself as professional formation as a historian started when I moved back to Zaporizhia and enrolled in history department, history program at Zaporizhia National University. And then probably I started just reopening Ukraine for myself. Because what was published in books, textbooks before in school, but I had access to good scholars, good minds, and at that period it was really difficult to find something to read. But because I had access to those people who could actually explain difficult pages of our history, and I developed many research interests that I'm still trying to find the answers. So one of my research topics that I'm still interested is the history of steppe Ukraine, southern Ukraine, and we know that particular part of Ukraine was understudied and has many misconceptions about its population, about its history, and Putin used different even name for this region just to justify his invasion, calling it Nova Russia, New Russian. When Russia started using and abusing history, I realized that I'm actually on the right path. That I have some professional obligations to provide accurate information about the history of this region and about the history of Ukraine also. But because I'm also the ethnographer, I had a chance to travel to many small villages across southern Ukraine and interviewed many people in different places, and I realized how complex is history of Ukraine and particularly of that region, and how many hidden stories we have. And those stories needed to be told, first of all, and shared. And if we actually had the opportunity to share them before, so probably we didn't have the problem when history of Ukraine is being a little bit instrumentalized by Russia.
Yeah, actually, I'm also from the east of Ukraine, so I can understand you totally. So, as I understood, you received your education in Zaporizhia University, yeah? Yeah, and how you continued to study Ukrainian history, maybe in Canada? Why did you move?
After I graduated from Zaporizhia National University, I moved to Kyiv, and I completed my PhD in Kyiv in National Academy of Science at the Institute of Ukrainian Archaeography and Source Studies. So my educational background is completely Ukrainian, but I developed some connections with our Canadian colleagues, and I had opportunity to visit Canada several times as a visiting researcher. I was invited by Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies first time, then I was invited by the Cool Center for Folklore Studies at University of Alberta, and then in 2013 I settled permanently here in Canada, and I have had several positions, different positions. And at this moment, I'm the editor-in-chief of Forum for Ukrainian Studies. It's the biggest journal outside of Ukraine, particularly in North America, that deals with the contemporary Ukraine. And we provide everyday analysis about the situation in Ukraine, particularly at this moment about the war that Russia unleashed on Ukraine. And we have several mini projects that are under the umbrella of the Forum for Ukrainian Studies. So, for instance, last year, when the full-scale invasion started, we launched a new project, which is a media monitoring project. And it was my new research interest that I developed in 2014 when I realized how knowledge can be manipulated and misrepresented. I started researching how misinformation, disinformation, propaganda work, and I have had organized several conferences and publications about this. But in 2022, particularly after February 21st, we launched this project, and it proved to be a really successful project. So every week we publish how Ukraine is being portrayed by media outlets here in North America, in Canada, and in Canada. And when we applied systematically, we started looking at how Ukraine is being portrayed. We were really shocked. We were shocked how many misconceptions are being circulated in really major outlets, and how Ukraine is misrepresented. And the problem was not just only about fake news, but because Ukraine was viewed for so long in the sphere of interest Russia, that for many journalists, for many researchers, it was really difficult to start looking at Ukraine as a legit actor with its own interest, with its own agenda, and we are really glad that at this moment, we are already having this project for over 1 year and a half, that situation is changing, that the West is learning about Ukraine, they know more about history, they apply more accurate vocabulary to describe Ukraine. So it's not just only in the sphere of interest of Russia, but it has already its own interest, and the own interest is because it is a legit nation, it is a legit state, and it has own future.
Okay, in your opinion, how strong a connection between Ukraine and Ukrainian diaspora in Canada? And did traditions, historical memory, values preserve here in Canada?
The simple answer, really strong. Really strong. But it has a really long history. And the Ukrainian Canadians, they played significant role in reintroducing historical memory in Ukraine at the beginning of 1990s, specifically because it was impossible to conduct any research in history in Ukrainian literature during the Soviet period, and if it was published, it was censored, it was manipulated. But here, particularly in North America, in Canada, many researchers, they continued researching Ukrainian history. They continued researching such black pages of our history as a Holodomor. And we have monuments, for instance, in Edmonton, that was erected in 1986. So it's one of the first monuments to the Holodomor. And those people, they played a huge role in 1991 when Ukraine regained its independence, just consulting, providing their expert knowledge. And I'm not speaking not just only about education and research, but also for many intergovernmental initiatives were established that help Ukraine to reform all kind of spheres, as from judiciary to all kind of economical problems. Yeah.
Have you visited Ukraine since you moved to Canada?
Yes, several times. But I need to confess that when in 2013 I settled permanently in Canada, I didn't have a chance to visit Ukraine for a really long time. And I visited Ukraine just, I think, after 3 years. And it was after Euromaidan revolution. And for me, it was a little bit of a reverse cultural shock, because I saw how Ukraine actually advanced significantly since 2014, and it was impressive for me to see that Ukraine actually achieved many things in terms of human rights, many reforms. Yes, it is still struggling, but it is on the right path. And for me, as an observer who is right now in Canada, to see some changes on the ground, it was really interesting. So I see that Ukraine is now even more trying to achieve other really important things, even in the times of war. So we see that Ukraine applied for membership with the European Union, and many good reforms are being worked out right now in Ukraine. I continue to think that yes, we still have problems, but because we have really vibrant society, first of all, and society applies a huge pressure right now on the officials. That is why I'm pretty sure that Ukraine will succeed in its path to become the member of European Union, because of society, first of all, because of society. Just we can recall what kind of resistance was put by Ukrainians in February 21st when the full-scale invasion was launched. It was first of all because of ordinary Ukrainians in many places, and we will learn their stories of their sacrifice, that Ukraine is actually still Ukraine, that Putin failed in his original plan to strip Ukraine of its independence.
How did you react on news at the 24th of February that Russia had started the full-scale invasion?
It was a shock, but I cannot say that I was not thinking about this. Because we remember that Russia started amassing its troops at different border crossings with Ukraine, and the pressure was growing, and specifically when Putin announced about its decision to integrate so-called DNR and LNR, I had the feeling that it is coming. And those days after his announcements, it was just for me the matter of time when it will happen. And it happened. Actually, I had some family celebration at that moment, like the birthday of my partner, and we didn't want even to celebrate at that moment. Because in Canada it was evening when everything started in Ukraine, so it was like around 7 p.m. And I started calling my relatives that it is time to actually to think about the safe place. Because it started.
By the way, where is your family now?
I have my family because, as I mentioned, my mom, she's from Kharkiv region, but she moved to Irpin several years ago. She was in Irpin when the full-scale invasion started. But majority of my family, they are in Zaporizhia. Like all my cousins, my grandmother, and my brother also lives in Zaporizhia. And right now we know that it is still the front line Zaporizhia, and they're still in Zaporizhia. I've constantly connect with them just to see if they are okay. But I need to admit that I'm really proud of those friends and my family that they are in Zaporizhia. They are probably much more stronger in terms of emotional preparedness to the situation that sometimes how I'm reacting to all of these things. So I remember that I contacted one of my friends and we discussed some just work-related projects, because we have many projects right now in Zaporizhia. We're collecting oral history interviews of those people who are right now displaced people from occupied territories, and they live in Zaporizhia. And it was like a regular meeting, and she admitted me that they didn't have anything like exploding in Zaporizhia for 1 week, and she feels a little bit like it's not normal. And she was laughing at this. So for me it was okay. It's a new normal. So for some people.
Are you involved in any volunteer movements? Maybe you have some an interesting experience in that field.
Yes, because as I mentioned, I'm the editor-in-chief of Forum for Ukrainian Studies, but I'm also deeply connected with different community organizations here. And I'm the president of the Alberta Society for Advancement of Ukrainian Studies. It's a really big organization, and when the full-scale invasion started, because our main portfolio is to help with research, education projects, but at that moment we realized that we need to help in different way, and we started collecting humanitarian aid. And we organized many volunteers. We teamed up with community halls at local churches, and we made a call on Facebook, Twitter, that we are collecting particular items that are right now really needed in Ukraine, and within just like several hours we had everything what we needed, even more. And brand new items. We actually, it was a huge truck that we packed with all of this humanitarian aid. And in our case, we didn't pay for those items, but we paid for shipment. So for the total value, we actually, last time we counted, it was approximately $100,000 of different items that we provided immediately to Ukraine. It was one of our first projects. And then I also participated in the project because the apartment building that where my mom lives also was half destroyed. And I fundraised here because Irpin, I don't know, you know, probably Irpin has many people that actually witnessed the war in 2014.
I understand, because my family also moved to Irpin, to Bucha.
Yes, and in that apartment building we have many families that actually they didn't have place to live. And we collected money, and we fully renovated that apartment building after it was damaged by, I think, by tanks. And at this moment, all of these families with children, and we managed to actually to renovate this building in last fall, before winter. So they didn't have all of these problems with when they didn't have half of the walls, and the roof was damaged. So we managed, and it was done in collaboration with Cobblestone Foundation, also Canadian foundation, that also the main purpose of that foundation was to help to promote Ukrainian culture, particularly Ukrainian dance, and they started fundraising for completely different projects. So we all worked in different capacities, but because I'm the employee of the University of Alberta, of the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, in cooperation with other research institutes and centers, we launched the project, which is the abbreviation DAS, dispersed Ukrainian scholars and students. And we help many Ukrainian students to settle here and to enroll in different programs, PhD programs, master programs. So the University of Alberta at this moment has over 100 Ukrainian students that we are helping them in different ways, just paying tuitions or providing fellowships so they can continue their education here abroad.
How do you think, what should the Ukrainian state policy be to promote Ukrainian history, Ukrainian culture, and interest in history among the society?
It's a good question because I just last week for the Forum for Ukrainian Studies interviewed Mikhailo Vinitsky. He is right now Deputy Minister of Education. Yes, and it was one of the questions that I also asked him. So at this moment, Ukraine is doing many things, but I don't think that it is enough. Specifically, if we are speaking about promoting Ukraine abroad. Ukraine has launched many really good initiatives like Ukrainian Institute, for instance, in London, that is working on cultural diplomacy and promoting Ukrainian education and Ukrainian history. But Ukraine needs to do even more. Provide different exchange programs after the war is over with different universities in Europe and in the US, in Canada. So we need to bring many students, not Ukrainian students, to Ukraine, to study Ukraine, that they could actually go and then share information about Ukraine. We need to help universities abroad to promote Ukrainian history and think about how we can establish different centers and institutes. Because the case of Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies at the University of Alberta has proved to be really successful. And then we also have Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute at Harvard University. And we have also some Ukrainian studies at Cambridge University. But because right now we have the demand, a huge demand, for knowledge, professional knowledge. So we need to work with other centers. And I know that particularly in Europe, they are discussing some university, they are planning to open some research centers that will be dealing with Ukraine. And for us as a professionals, it's really important to help just with some advices. How to organize those centers, because Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies is one of the biggest outside of Ukraine that deals with the different dimensions of history, literature, political science, and everything is about Ukraine and about the region and the place of Ukraine in the region. So for us, it's really important just to establish those connections and think about how we can publish more in English. So for our scholars in Ukraine, we need to go outside of our circle of Ukrainian language and publish more in English. And just one of the examples, I participated as the author in this really good volume. It is the history of Ukraine, age of 18th century. And majority of authors, and it was just published like 1 month ago by really major publishing house, McGill Queen's University here in Canada. But many authors, they are Ukrainians from Ukraine, and the number of articles included in this volume is the proof how actually the study of Ukraine, and particularly of some centuries, has improved. So, and for the world to have such publication is significant achievement. It's significant achievement because as I mentioned, some pages of our history, they are still unknown to the outside world. And 18th century is probably one of those pages that requires a lot of attention. Not just because Putin used that period to justify its invasion, but because we need to pay attention to all all our aspect of our history. So not just only the particular ones that usually were dominating in our narratives.
Can we now talk about the future prospects of complete separation from Russia in the cultural aspect, and Ukrainians gaining an understanding of the separateness and identity?
A lot has been done already, and it's not just only after the full-scale invasion or after Crimea was annexed. It's just only what is happening right now. It's crystallization of what we have at this moment. So for Ukrainians, we need to say because here in the West, and sometimes I hear this from some people in Ukraine, that Putin helped Ukrainians to find the identity, and that Putin didn't help. It was already here. It was already in Ukraine, and our goal is just only to guide the future of development of Ukrainian identity. But our society has already formed the agenda. And it is really full agenda. So just to work on our culture, history, and the interest is also there. So just if we looked at how many YouTube channels are right now that are trending about history, literature, about Ukrainian fashion, and about everything. So all of those YouTube channels, they were even before full-scale invasion. So we started noticing them, and Ukraine will be noticing more things that are really happening right now in Ukraine. And I think the future is really bright for the development of culture in Ukraine.
Okay, thank you. So our interview is over. Thank you. It was really interesting conversation for me.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe for more.